Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pastors in Recovery. Today, we're going to talk about how recovery takes time, and it's okay. That leads us to our first point. Recovery takes time, and it is okay. Everybody knows that healing is a process. It's not an event. It's like if I was going to go on a road trip with my family, let's say from Phoenix to Seattle, we could try to get there as fast as we could. We could get in our car, and it's like about 3 days straight drive if you stop and go to hotels. But you could probably do it in 24 hours if you never stop. You got to get gas and stuff, of course, but you never stop and then keep going and take turns driving, while someone else sleeps, and you'll get there in about 24 hours. But this is with your family. What if you slowed down and said, you know what? We're going to go to Seattle to see Grandma, but let's make the journey just as fun as getting there. So we plan to stop at places. We take our time. We stay in hotels. We go swimming in the hotel pool. We stop and get food that's fun and maybe an ice cream cone, whatever. So we can get there fast, but we miss out on the journey. In recovery, our healing is a process. It's not an event. It's not something that we go to. It's not like a football game that we're going to go to. It's not an event. It's not a concert. It is a life process. It's that journey. We want to understand that it's going to take time, so let's enjoy every moment of the journey. Our struggles develop over time, and recovery takes time. Think about it. It's taken you an entire life to mess yourself up, right? It's going to take a while to get things fixed as well. It's normal to feel impatient. It's normal to be frustrated. It's like, why can't I just kick this? And you fill in the blank there. Why do I have to keep struggling with this? Why can't I overcome this? And it's frustrating. We want to just, we want to take the blue pill. We want to take the red pill. We want it to be a vending machine. We put in the money and we get what we need. It doesn't happen that way. It takes time. It's, as a pastor, you understand discipleship. People can come down in the front for prayer at church, and God can do some really deep work in their life. There can be healing. There can be all kinds of cool things that God does there. But the process of discipleship is what makes a Christian's life have depth. And the same thing's true in recovery. We take it a day at a time, and so we develop depth in our recovery. You might feel the pressure to be fixed quickly because your role as a pastor. Man, I got to get this over with so I don't blow it. Or I don't want to, mess up the ministry God's given me. And I don't want to ruin my marriage. I don't want to be caught. Well, can I remind you of James 1:4? Let perseverance finish its work. Why? So that you may be mature. And that leads us to main point number 2. Patience is part of God's plan for growth. That's right. It's part of the plan. Waiting is part of the plan. I mean, how many things in your life, in your ministry, have you had to wait for? And it was good, but didn't you believe that the process of waiting was actually what built your character to get where you are? If God gave you the dream that he gave you and he fulfilled it overnight, wouldn't you have no idea how to handle it? Wouldn't you be overwhelmed with it? Wouldn't it destroy you inside? Maybe you'd like accountability. Maybe you'd make stupid, foolish choices and destroy the whole thing. Well, in recovery, it's the same thing. You got to let the patience do the work so that when God's ready, as time builds, you build and build and build. You finally get to the place where you are filled, you are growing, you have arrived to that place that you thought the place that you can see. God gives you a vision of what your life could be, to be free from that hurt, hang up, and habit. You can get there, but you're not going to get there today. But that's okay. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, for everything there is a season. So waiting is not a wasted part of that process. It is definitely where God shapes us. We're going to go ahead and take a little break right now. Hey guys, I want to encourage you to join a recovery group. There's a lot of different recovery groups out there you can join, but I want to give you kind of the group something that I've been doing, and that is called CPR. It stands for Celebrating Pastors in Recovery. This is a ministry of Celebrate Recovery. I am the West Coast ambassador for Celebrating Pastors in Recovery, and I am excited to be leading groups and to helping and encouraging other pastors to do so. Although this podcast is not directly related to it, this is the ministry that I am personally involved in. And I want to encourage you to join. If you're interested in finding out more about joining a group, go to cprpastors.com. cprpastors.com. All right, we're back, and let's continue our discussion on the idea of recovery takes time and it's okay. When I was first getting into recovery, the first thing that I talked about and dealt with was anger. I had a lot of anger. I just lose it with people, and I'd lose it with my kids, lose it with my wife, and I was like, God, take this away, God, take this away, and I might have been better for a couple of days, and I could get filled with the Spirit, and the gifts of the Spirit are working in my life, and the fruit of the Spirit's in my life, but I still struggle with anger. It's a dysfunction that was within me. So how did I overcome it? Well, I started reading books and started talking about it and started being honest about it. But as time went on, I peeled back the onion and I began to realize that there's a reason I'm angry. The reason I was so angry is because I was struggling with sexual addiction, and I was angry about it. I was embarrassed about it, and I was angry because I couldn't overcome it. I was angry because I couldn't, kick it. And it was just like inside of me. And so any little thing would just blow the steam off, and I'd blast people. And it wasn't even about them. It was this thing that was within me. So that brings me to this idea that patience helps us focus on progress and not perfection. You got to focus in on the progress. Don't focus in on the perfection. I couldn't say, okay, I'm just going to focus in on not being angry. Why can't I be angry? Why can't I overcome anger right now, today? And as I focused on that, it just made me more frustrated. But if I focus instead on the progress, oh man, that was a good book I just read. That was helpful. I did learn something. Or, man, I just went to a recovery meeting and I was in an open share group and I shared how I struggled with anger this week. You see, that was good. That's the progress. That's what I'm focusing on. So you're thinking, but those are so small little things. I mean, it doesn't amount to anything. Yes, it does. You ever played the game Jenga? We have those little blocks and you stack them up. You start stacking those blocks, it gets higher and higher and higher. And it doesn't matter how small the little block is. It doesn't matter how small your victory is. You need to celebrate it. Celebrate that victory. Celebrate the small things. In recovery groups, they give out chips for days of sobriety, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and in coins for 1 year and 2 years and so on. And maybe you just need to celebrate the victory by going to Starbucks and getting a coffee. But no matter how you celebrate milestones. This creates hope. It renews hope and gives you motivation to continue to grow. And that leads me to point number 3. Let's surrender our timelines to God. This is really hard for me, but the need to control my recovery timeline is really hard. It's like, okay, God, by this time I want to be this and that. And by that time I want this to be done and that to be done. And God's like, no, got to let go of it. You got to let go. So if we try to rush recovery, what happens? We get discouraged because it doesn't happen. And we're discouraged, like, oh man, I thought I'd be at this place by this time. Don't think that way. Just celebrate the little steps. Celebrate them. Don't be discouraged about what you haven't accomplished. Celebrate what you have. Philippians 1:6 says, it reminds us that God will complete the work in whose time? His time. We got to trust. We got to trust God even when it doesn't seem like there's any progress. To know that God is working behind the scenes even if it doesn't seem like it. You and I both know God works behind the scenes. So what do? We focus on those daily steps. We don't just focus on the end goal. It's like the game of football. The goal is to get the ball into the end zone, but we can throw the ball all the way down there and hope that the receiver catches it and, wow, touchdown, that's awesome. But a lot of times a score happens because, play after play, maybe 2 yards here, 5 yards here, 6 yards there, 2 yards there. Oh, we fumbled the ball or we got sacked. Now it's another 3 yards or 4 yards. We focus on those steps. We're going to eventually get to the goal. So what do? We embrace each day as an opportunity for small steps of healing. The journey is just as important as the destination. I know that's kind of cliche, but it's really true. And one last final thing before I close, and that is, I struggle with a lot, but this was one of my things. But I just want to remind you, don't ever compare your recovery journey with anyone else. Everybody's on their own timeline. Everyone is unique, and everything that God does in you is very personal for you. So don't look at your life and say, oh my gosh, I am not where so-and-so is, or I'm not where this person is. It doesn't matter, because it's not a comparison. It's not a competition. It's not a race. This is between you and yourself. This is between you, God, and someone you trust. I want to reassure you that patience is definitely the key to experience the true and deep recovery that you're longing for. I don't pray in every recovery podcast, but I'm going to pray to close this one out tonight. I'm just going to say, God, help us to trust you in the process in our lives. Help us to develop that patience, and help us to surrender the control to your perfect timing in Jesus. Amen. Well, thanks for listening again today to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe and write something in the comments. Pass along the word. And by the way, just want everyone to know that if you're looking for this podcast in the YouTube app, you're going to want to search for Pastors in Recovery, and you'll find the channel. It's got its own channel now there, Pastors in Recovery. In fact, if you just search Pastors in Recovery under the podcast of pretty much any podcast app like Spotify or whatever you're getting your podcast, all you have to do is just type in Pastors in Recovery and you'll find the podcast. Well, thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and may God bless you richly this week. See you next time.
Only God can deal with the hurting that you feel. God can turn your mourning and make your hurt pain heal. Every time you run, shoot with your own gun. Remember, God can do what you have never done. You're the pastor of a church, you wish that it would grow. But listen, man, you're missing the thing you need to know. Admitting that you need to let those deep things go, to take those hang-ups out. He'll heal you, there's no doubt. When you look at your own life, you're running with a knife. God wants to change your game.